All right, welcome to this week's episode of Nick's Rockin' Wrestling Podcast. Thank you once again for listening. Been getting some great feedback of those of you that have been listening. Want to remind you, two ways to listen is on SoundCloud, or if you hit that little subscribe button on iTunes, each week's new episode will pop up right there for you on Wednesday night. So this week we do have a guest. Got two big guests, big musical influences on me. Phil Soussan and Vinny Appice from the band Last in Line. You'll probably be more familiar with Vinny, who was in the original Dio band, as well as Black Sabbath. Phil has played with a number of acts, including Ozzy Osbourne and The Firm. I had a great conversation with them this past weekend at the venue Holy Diver here in Sacramento. Last in Line is currently on a loop of West Coast dates, so I got to sit down with them for a little bit and talk everything Last in Line, talk everything career retrospective, and it was really cool. Two cool, super cool dudes who I enjoyed very much talking to. But first, I want to remind you that you can follow this podcast on Twitter. The Twitter handle is Nick's RNW Podcast, Nick's RNW Podcast, as well as on Facebook, Nick's Rockin' Wrestling Podcast, and the Gmail, rockinwrestlingpodcast@gmail.com. Hit me up on the Twitter, Facebook, email, anything like that. Any guest suggestions, any questions you want to have answered, send them my way. First, I want to explain a little bit about this episode. It's going to be a little bit different than normal because my interview only ran about 20 minutes with Phil and Vinny. Usually when I have guests, usually try to run about 45 to an hour, but sometimes that just doesn't happen. Being in a band myself for a number of years, I know how tight time is. And when you're a national act, that time is even tighter, especially when you're traveling from LA to Sacramento like these guys were. They had to get loaded in. They had to do sound check. They had to do meet and greets. So I totally get that. But they were cool enough for them to sit down with me for about 20 minutes and chat up a little bit about their careers, how things are going in the business still. I mean, Vinny's had over 40 years in the business, so that's amazing, and he still kills it on the drums. And Phil, man, he's been just about the same, about 40 years in the business, and just kills it on bass. So it was cool to sit down with them for a little bit and for them to take time out of their busy schedule and chit-chat a little bit. For those of you that aren't familiar what Last in Line is, Last in Line is, I wouldn't call it a tribute band by any means. Basically, Ronnie James Dio, the original singer for the band Dio, Ritchie Blackmore's band called Rainbow, and then he was the singer who replaced Ozzy in Black Sabbath. That's I got turned on to Dio with the original Dio band, so all the great songs like Holy Diver, Last in Line, Don't Talk to Strangers, all of that is where I found Dio. Then I went back and realized, oh, he's the guy that replaced Ozzy in Black Sabbath. So we talked a little bit about some cool stories about Dio and such, but in about a few years ago, the original Dio band, which is Vinny, Vivian Campbell on guitar, who also plays in Def Leppard, and then the bass player at the time, Jimmy Bain, got back together, and they started jamming. They started doing some shows with the original Dio material, and then they eventually wrote their own material, and they have one record out called Heavy Crown. They have a second record, which we talked about. It's going to be coming out next year, and they are a phenomenal live band. They do great justice to the Dio songs, and it's awesome stuff. And I will always remember Dio will always have a special place because of two things. He created the devil horns. He was the kind of the guy that put it out there for everybody when he became in Sabbath. So, I mean, if you're a rocker or metalhead, everybody uses the devil horns. And then I always remember on my 21st birthday is when Dio passed away. I'll remember that. Woke up in the morning, May 16th, 2010. Oh, man, Dio passed away. It sucks because I would have loved to have seen Dio live, whether it was with Heaven and Hell or his solo band. Would have loved to have seen him, but I didn't get the opportunity to. But Last in Line does great just, so it almost feels like, hey, they're paying great tribute to Ronnie, keeping Ronnie, as well as the bass player Jimmy Bain's Memory Alive, which we talk about in the interview. So good stuff. They played at a venue here in Sacramento called Holy Diver, which was kind of ironic considering Dio's first record on his solo career was Holy Diver. And Vinny made a little joke about, now we're going to play Holy Diver in Holy Diver, which was quite funny. But it's a great little venue. It used to be called Starlight Lounge. I played there with Motorized. We did an EP release show in 2015 or 2016 there. We opened for Grim Reaper there. So it's a small little intimate venue, which is really cool, especially when you see a bigger band like this, who's probably used to be playing, bigger clubs, especially in Europe. So it's cool, for them to be intimate and up close. And there's a lot of great memorabilia in the venue. They've really done a good job remodeling it. There's like Iron Maiden memorabilia in there, Dio. I even saw a Poison thing, some Motley Crue, some Guns N' Roses stuff. So it's a really cool venue, and we've been getting a lot of good bands coming through there. So I would definitely check that venue out. If there's a band coming you want to see at that venue, go check it out. Second thing is this podcast. Obviously, my interview didn't go as long because Vinny and Phil were very busy having to do sound check, and I totally get that. So this episode's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to give the interview that I recorded with them this past Saturday here in a little bit, and then I also want to preference that we were doing it in the venue. They were getting ready to sound check, so you'll get a little bit of background noise, but not too much. We did a really good job of holding the mics close so we could hear each other. You'll hear Vivian Campbell doing a little sound check, which is cool. So just beware of that. And then after their interview, I'm going to do the second half of this podcast on a little bit of a preview of WWE Elimination Chamber, which is this Sunday. So you kind of get rock and wrestling in one podcast here. So just beware that, the interview isn't as long as some of the other interviews on the podcast, but that's okay. Got a preview of Elimination Chamber, which will be at the back end after the interview. So just be ready for that. So coming up here in moments, Vinny and Phil from Last in Line. All right, I'm here with Vinny and Phil from Last in Line.
Yeah.
So, how you guys? First day of the tour was yesterday, right?
Yeah, we played the Whiskey last night.
So how's it going so far?
Last night was fantastic. We've sort of been on this sort of sporadic tour, so it hasn't really been a start to finish type of tour. It's been more like we get together and then we do a run of shows. So we did the Whiskey when was it? About 3 or 4 months ago, and we sold it out. We had a great time, and then last night was no slouch either. It was a big crowd.
Sold out last night.
Awesome, that's good. And then you guys did a run of your European dates, at the end of last year?
We did 2 tours. One was at the end of November, and then we went back again and did one in the summertime.
Okay.
So we were in Europe twice.
All right, and a couple things like with Last in Line, obviously it's like you're paying tribute to Ronnie, obviously, in his music, but you also have an original record out as well called Heavy Crown.
Yeah.
Was this always kind of the plan after Ronnie's passing to get the original Dio band back together and kind of...
Well, it started out, as the bio says, as a fun thing. Viv called up and said, "You want to jam?" I spoke to Jimmy, and he's up for a jam. I said, "Yeah, that'd be fun." So we got together, jammed. We had a lot of fun, trying to remember the songs, and Viv remembering the solos. And we did it a time after that, about 2 weeks later. And then we invited Andy down. He's a friend of mine. He was in town. I said, come down. You know some of the Dio stuff. So he came down and sang, and he blew everybody away. It's like, wow, it's incredible, dude. So we decided, let's do some gigs, So we started with some gigs and played a bunch of gigs, a couple in Europe, Japan. And then we got a record deal from Frontiers Records from a manager, Steve Strange. And we decided to write material for that, and that was great. It was just like Holy Diver. Like the writing process was wide open. We had a lot of fun. All the ideas, And then right before the album came out, Jimmy passed away.
Yeah, wasn't that on the
It
cruise?
was on the cruise with Def Leppard. It was a crazy cruise. Joe Elliott lost his voice for a bit, and Andy sang with them, and Jimmy passed away, and it was just a crazy cruise. So then we took some time off, and then we called Phil, because Phil's in the same hood as us. He's from the same
Cut from the
family, cut from the same
From the same metal.
same
metal cutter.
Metal cutter.
And we know Phil for years, and it was like a perfect fit. So playing with Phil was just amazing, and we're having a great time. And then we wrote for the second album. We just finished recording all the basics, and that went just as well, even better.
Yeah, the
than
first
before.
album was killer. It was
Well, I would like to say as well, I knew Jimmy Bain very well. We were kind of bass players in sister bands at the time. Jimmy was, of course, playing with Dio, and I was playing with Ozzy at the same time. But outside of that, we were best friends, and we lived together for a while. And so this is it's a great honor for me to be able to do this for Jimmy as well. This is a great way that I can keep his legacy alive. And every show we remember him, and because if it wasn't for Jimmy, then the original Dio band wouldn't have got together.
no,
And,
absolutely
yeah.
not.
So, I mean, I think the spirit of the band, from my perspective, the spirit of the band, I think, was that Viv and Vinny and Jimmy wanted to get together because there had been a magical chemistry during those first three albums, correct? Yeah. And it wasn't so much to pay tribute to it, but when that chemistry was still there, that there was still a creative force there to come up with new material. So for me, when we went into the studio, and as well for them, there was obviously an element of unspoken doubt as to, well, is the chemistry going to have been fucked with? I mean, is it gone now? And none of us knew it. The first day we got together in writing session, it was just the first couple of songs we came up with it shivers up the back of your spine, and went, wow, this is really, really cool.
Yeah, just a real natural process.
Yeah. So it's
We all feel
a very
this
exciting
album's an
thing.
actual
Yeah.
couple of notches better than the other one.
I can't wait to hear that then, yeah.
Yeah, we're really proud of this one.
When is it expected out?
Probably next year.
Next year?
Beginning of the year. Beginning of the year.
Okay, one of the things I've always wondered, especially because there's so many great Dio songs, how do you guys choose your set list? I mean, obviously, you got to play Holy Diver, Last in Line, all that. How do you guys,
Well, we're not playing Holy Diver tonight.
Oh, well, why play Holy Diver at Holy Diver?
We're in Holy Diver.
Yeah, we usually have a punch up before. We go out in the parking lot and we duke it out. Figure out the songs.
Just fight and figure, all right, this is the song.
There's some songs which I don't think the band could go on stage without playing. But that's it's an enhancement to the set, of course. But people want to hear the new material too, and that's really the unspoken thing. That's something you don't have control over. You can do everything right, and then and put out new material. We go to see heritage bands all the time. Oh, here's our old songs. Here's something new we wrote, and everyone goes to the bathroom. And here, everybody wants to stick around. They know the words. They love the new songs. So it's best of both worlds.
Yeah, because I came and saw you guys when you guys played SAC last year at the Goldfield, and it was good that you guys had a good mixture of like old and new. So it wasn't
there's
like
only new at that time. There were probably 3 new songs, maybe 2 or 3 new songs. Now we do 4 possibly, and the album's been out long enough where our fans know the songs. So. And then we play all the Dio classics. That's what everybody wants to hear, and we have fun playing.
So. I saw you guys come in and you were looking at some of the posters. Any memories of any specific gigs that you guys see on this? Like, I know, is there a Monsters of Rock over there? Anything you guys remember playing?
When I played with Hendrix over there, that Jimi Hendrix thing, and then I played with Zeppelin before then, or after then.
I picture me and the Beatles when I was before Ringo. They call me Vingo.
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 No, it's cool. I haven't really looked around enough of the Dio stuff. I know looked at some of the stuff really cool. Great place here.
It is. I was in a local band. We played before it turned over here, and it's a really cool place.
Yeah.
Only bitch is the stairs carrying stuff
Tell you
up.
one thing, it's gonna be fucking loud in there tonight.
Yeah, hey, wouldn't have it any.
Bring your earplugs.
Some
So
of this memorabilia, though, it's like a lot of time you go into clubs and they have loads of posters and stuff like that.
fake.
But they've got some really great stuff, like some presentation albums and stuff that you can't you can't replicate.
yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
It's really cool.
So, doing some research for our interview, specifically, I didn't know that you were in Rick Derringer. I had no idea that you played with Derringer.
Yeah, I played with Derringer in 1976.
So,
We got together in 75 and we wrote an album, and that was called Derringer, and then we went out 76 and did a whole bunch of tour dates, and we did the Aerosmith Rocks tour, opening for Aerosmith. And we did, back then it was funny because we did clubs, co-headlining. One night we'd headline, next night they'd headline with Journey,
So-
it was that long ago.
yeah, because
And then there was a band opening for us, and it was in Connecticut. It's like, who the hell is this band? Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers? What kind of name is that? Gee, they'll never get anywhere. Yeah, that was everything was starting up. It was a pretty cool time.
Yeah, because when you think of you, I think of metal, Dio, Sabbath. I
Yeah.
didn't think of Derringer because that's such kind of a
I even
departure.
played with John Lennon.
Yeah,
before
Lennon. I mean,
that
that's
was real young.
I mean-
16, 17 years old. Did some stuff with him too.
And then you said you played with Ozzy. What era were you playing with Ozzy?
Ultimate Sin, the
Ultimate
Ultimate
Sin.
Sin album. So that was joined the band in '85, towards the end of '85, and then we played through that album, toured, wrote it, recorded it, played through until I left, which was about just before '89, '88. Yeah, towards the
So right before the kind of the Zach era coming
Well,
in.
we found Zach. Randy Castillo and I found Zach. When we had been in the band, it was with Jake, and then Jake left the band when we had started writing the next. We got together and started writing. I'd written a song called "Shot in the Dark." It became a big hit, and so there was a bit of there was an onus on me to sort of get write everything, or at least be more instrumental in writing. And so I started doing that, and for some reason Jake didn't seem to be interested anymore, and so he, for whatever reason, he left, and then we had to find a guitar player. So we looked through 400 guitar players in LA. Ozzy just released the tribute album, so he was off on the road marketing that, and he left us in the Oakwoods in LA looking for a guitar player. And after 400 envelopes, we found Zach.
That's
And
awesome.
then I played with Zach for about a year before I left.
And then, is it true there's a rumor that you almost got a gig with Ozzy in between?
Well, in 1980, when was that? 80. Ozzy was putting the first band together. Sharon Osbourne called me and said, "Hey, Ozzy's putting a new band together. You want to fly over to England? We heard about you and go meet Ozzy, see how you get along." And I was like, "Wow, where's England? I've never been out of the country really, except for Canada back then. I was only 20-something years old." So I asked my brother Carmine. I said, "I got this offer from Ozzy. Is he crazy or, what do you think?" And my brother had more time spent with Ozzy. He said, "Yeah, he's pretty nuts, So I actually didn't do it. I said, "No, I can't do it," and blah 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 blah. So, and then about 2 months later, Sabbath calls. It's a good year when those two bands call you.
How did that?
One year.
How did that call go? Because I've always been curious about did they just know you from Derringer and were like, "Hey, this guy's a good drummer. Let's have him come in for Ward during the tour"? Or?
Well, at that point I did 2 Derringer albums, and then I did an album called Axis, and that was with Andy Johns producing. It was a little more heavy power trio thing. And I guess they heard that, and then I know Iommi heard it, because when I went to meet Tony, he had it in his hand. He had the album, because I liked the album, And they invited me down that night to meet Tony, see how we get along, and then Tony loved me and said, "Come down tomorrow to rehearsal."
He asked you to sign the record, didn't he?
Yeah, but I said, "I can't sign that. I'm sorry. I'm all booked." Tony. Iommi.
So then that would eventually lead to you meeting Ronnie and going with the Dio band, right?
Yeah, then I went down the next day, SIR in Sunset Studios, and they said, "What do you want to play?" I met Ronnie Geezer and Jeff Nichols, the keyboard player. And I remember hearing Neon Nights on. I wasn't really a big Sabbath fan, and yeah, I heard Neon Nights on the radio on the 405. I went, "Oh, that new singer's good." And I didn't follow Rainbow. Ronnie James Dio, he's pretty awesome. So I heard it and I knew it. So I said, well, let's play that one. I know the tempo and I don't know the parts of the song. So we played that. That was the first song we ever played together.
So you kind of
30-something years, 32, 33 years later, it was the last song I played with Ronnie.
really.
Yeah,
When
ever.
when was that?
In Asbury Park, New Jersey. Was it Asbury Park or where's the gambling?
Oh, Atlantic City.
Atlantic City. One of those two.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was Atlantic City. It was the last gig we played together with Ronnie. And that was the encore. And that song's been moved around in the set. It was the opener, it was the middle, it was the opener, it was the end, and happened to be the end on that tour. And that was the last song I ever played with him.
And the first song you
The
ever
first
played.
song I ever played.
That's awesome. Was there any talk before Ronnie passed about getting the original Dio band back together?
Oh, no.
No.
No. No. No, he was doing Dio.
Yeah.
Actually, he was scheduled to go do that year in November, go out and do a Dio tour in Europe, and then Heaven and Hell were going to continue the next year. So he was going out with his band. I wasn't with him. So there was no talk of that.
Okay, awesome. So one of the other big things here I'm looking at my notes is I love hearing Dio stories. Like, you know, he was really good to his fans. I know, obviously, you both obviously know him. What are some of the cool stories he did for fans? I know I've heard a lot about him being...
That he did for fans?
Fans, that he was a real stand-up kind of guy.
They used to kick him out of the dressing room and stuff. And, no, actually, one of the first gigs of the American tour was playing arenas, you know, and I'm like, kid in the candy store, I'm like, this is cool. Get in the limo, riding in limos, and we pull out of the arena, and it's cold. It's winter time somewhere on the East Coast. The limo pulls up, goes driving. We're going to go back to the hotel, goes to the gate. There's a bunch of kids there. Ronnie goes, stop the car. He gets out, goes and signs everything. Oh, cool. I got out and went with him. And he always did that. Always took the time to sign stuff for everybody. And in Europe, when we did the first Holy Diver tour, that's Vivian Campbell, ladies and gentlemen. So we play Hammersmith Odeon, places, theaters in England. It was really cold out. It was January. And they'd say, Ronnie, there's like 50 kids outside waiting for autographs. Bring them inside. So we used to bring them inside. They used to sit down, and then we'd just walk down there, sign everything for them. It's really cool. That was before the days of paid meet and greets.
That is cool.
Pure rock and roll.
So, excuse me there. I want to get into a little bit about your history. Obviously, we talked about Ozzy and what you band there. How, you know, musically, where did you start? You know, obviously we know Vinny from Sabbath. Where did you start at? You know, what bands did you start with?
What bands did I start with?
Yeah. Where did you get your break?
I started out playing.
Okay, that's all.
So what?
Okay, you're done.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. So, you know, actually in London, Ozzy used to do a same similar kind of thing. Like, we'd be starving at the end of the show, and we'd be on the bus, and there's no way to get any food, and he'd see like a bunch of fans who'd have like Kentucky Fried Chicken, so he's like, stop the bus, I'll get off and sign some autographs for some chicken.
We didn't have the
Meet and eat. That's called the meet and eat.
Meet and eat?
Meet and eat, right.
I'll have to remember that.
Not meet and greet, meet and eat.
Well, next time you guys come to town, I'll make sure I bring KFC then.
No, that's okay. So,
It's going to be so loud in here, doesn't it?
it is. So, I mean, I started out playing in the bands, playing bands around London with lots and lots of different people, and I played with a band that was Simon Kirk's band from Bad Company. We were signed to Swansong, and through Swansong I met Jimmy Page, and then I started a band with him that would eventually become The Firm.
Oh,
And I left that after about 9 or 10 months because I got the gig with Ozzy. I sort of knew Ozzy, I knew Sharon, and they knew me. And they saw me on a TV show and asked me to come down and audition. So I joined a huge audition group, and I got the gig. And from that point, it was sort of snowballed from there. So at that point, I was in Ozzy at that particular time, mid-'80s, and I got to meet... I actually knew Jimmy Bain from earlier through his band Wild Horses with Brian Robertson, who I was good friends with.
We're gonna have to go.
Okay. Okay.
I'm gonna have to go.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll finish up with him. Thanks.
Yeah. And so that's sort of how it kind of evolved from there.
So, before you got into Last in Line, where were you at in terms of who were you playing with before Last in Line?
Well, the last decade, I was playing either with John Waite or Richie Cartson. I played with Richie and our dear friend Pat Torpey, who just passed away just last week, unfortunately. And I also released 2 solo records, so I was working those records. And then I was doing a lot of projects, like I still do the Raiding the Rock Vault show in Las Vegas. And I was doing a lot of other things like fantasy camps and stuff like that. So a lot of studio work. I really wanted to focus more on studio skills, so I was mixing albums and I was producing and I was mastering. And but this band is perfect.
It is. Real quick, I know you got to go here because probably sound check, but one crazy Aussie story that you have from the road, one crazy Aussie story that you have from the road with Ozzy.
There's so many. I mean, it's funny because I'm writing an autobiography at the moment, and so it's forcing me to relive all of these crazy stories. But one of them was in Sacramento here, and it was a crazy, wacky day where we had driven for 3 days from New Orleans to get up here. We arrived here on July the 4th, and we checked in, I think it was the Marriott, and everyone was just wound up and couldn't wait to get off that bus. And we had a day off, which was a disaster. Days off were always danger because everyone would drink too much, and there's this thing. The fire alarms were going off. Somebody set the fire alarms. We'd had like girls from a local dance club come over and set up shop in one of the rooms, and somewhere around there, and I'm not going to mention any names, but somehow the white limo for the hotel, in all the excitement with all the fire department and everything, somehow a huge human turd had somehow ended up on the front hood of this white limo, and no one was noticing it. No, people were just walking past it, and it had come from the top floor. So
only one person probably came forward.
Well, I'm not mentioning any names. There were some crazy, silly times, though.
So I know you got to go do sound check. I much appreciate both you and Vin coming on, giving me the time, talk a little bit about history, about the band, what's going on with Last in Line.
Pleasure.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Hope you enjoy the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Come and see us.
All right, once again, I want to thank Phil and Vinny for joining me on this week's episode. Super cool dudes. Killer band. If you haven't checked it out, check out Last in Line. Go check out Vinny's other stuff when he played in Dio and Black Sabbath. Even some of the stuff we talked about when he played in Rick Derringer. Also, check out Phil's stuff when he played in Ozzy. He played a little bit with The Firm, so definitely check out that stuff. Super cool dudes. As I explained earlier in the intro of the show, that now is the time where I'm going to do a little bit of an Elimination Chamber preview. Now, I'm doing an extensive, long period of talking here, so I may have to take a drink of water. I've been fighting off a cold for the last week, so please excuse me if I have to take away for a little bit and you hear some dead air, which you shouldn't, but you might hear a cough or two. Just me taking a drink of water. So, for those of you that don't know, WWE Elimination Chamber is this Sunday live on the WWE Network. It's a Raw exclusive pay-per-view. First, I wanted to start and talk about the big news that they dropped this week, that they're going to do away with brand-specific pay-per-views, meaning there's not going to be a Raw pay-per-view and a SmackDown pay-per-view. They're going to get away from the having two pay-per-views a month, go back to one singular pay-per-view, and they be co-branded, meaning you're going to have some Raw matches and SmackDown matches. There's talk that they may expand to 4 hours and such. I think it's kind of good in that sense that, you're going to go back to one pay-per-view. I think sometimes you can oversaturate your market a little bit by having two pay-per-views a month. Some of the lower card talent may not be featured on those pay-per-views. There's a lot of logistics. Obviously, I don't know. I don't work for the company that went into this decision, but I think one of the issues that they're running into is that the single branded pay-per-views aren't doing that well as in terms of buy rate and people subscribing onto the WWE network. So they figure if you can get all your big stars from Raw and SmackDown on one pay-per-view, that will help the buy rate and the subscribe rate. But I think too, less opportunities for other guys. So we'll see how it plays out in the long run. The original brand extension had a situation like this. They started with single branded pay-per-views, then they switched it to co-branded, and then it went to single branded and then back to co-branded. So they flip-flop back and forth sometimes. I like having 2 pay-per-views a month. I think it gave an opportunity to see guys on SmackDown and Raw and maybe situations of feuds build out longer. But we'll see how the single branded pay-per-views work out after WrestleMania. So this weekend is the Elimination Chamber live on the WWE Network, live from Las Vegas. It's got a pretty good card. Some big things are going down as we're into WrestleMania season here. My favorite time of the year, really building towards that main event, everything building towards WrestleMania, the Hall of Fame induction, everything like that. So it's going to be a big time event, in my opinion. There's some people that are not excited for it, but I think it's going to be a really, really good show. For those of you that don't know, this Elimination Chamber match, basically, it's like a steel cage meets Hell in a Cell, and basically certain superstars come out in certain intervals from the little chamber pods, and you have to be eliminated. Last person standing is the winner. And before we get into kind of the preview of that, my predictions, which then I'll recap next week, is I want to review a little bit from Monday Night Raw, because Monday Night Raw this week had some huge moments. It started off with the 7 guys that are going to be in the Elimination Chamber match doing a gauntlet match. And what was crazy about this is this is the first time they're going to do 7 guys in Elimination Chamber. Usually it's 6 because 2 guys start off, 4 guys in the pod. This weekend, 3 guys are going to start off with the other 4 remaining in pods. So they started off a gauntlet match. Reigns came out, did a little bit of a promo, then Seth Rollins comes out, and Seth Rollins, after this, if you weren't a fan and you were watching, you're an idiot, because he put on the performance of a fucking lifetime. This dude was in a match, a consistent match on Monday Night Raw for 65 minutes, an hour and 5 minutes. This dude wrestled his ass off. They booked and made Seth Rollins look like the king of the world. He came out, him and Reigns just went back and forth. Great match. I mean, it was like the first half hour or so of Monday Night Raw, just back and forth. And then Rollins rolled him up. Reigns was eliminated. And then Cena came out, and him and Cena just went back and forth. And they did such a good job here, Rollins did, of selling Cena's beating, but not giving up. Every time Cena went for a cover, Rollins would kick out. Cena would do a bigger move, Rollins would kick out. He'd do a bigger move, Rollins would kick out. And then finally Rollins, one of the cool spots was Rollins actually rolled over and gave Cena his own finishing move, the AA, to him. And then finally Rollins beat Cena. And it was like, holy shit, man, this guy's been out there for, somewhere almost an hour. The show on West Coast time starts at 5, and Rollins was in the ring till 6:05. It was incredible, because then out came Elias. Elias would eliminate Seth Rollins, but holy shit, did Seth Rollins put on a performance. And it's like, okay, now maybe they're rebuilding Seth Rollins to be the guy. Maybe it's not Roman Reigns, but it was like, that was a performance of a fucking lifetime right there that kicked ass. So then Elias came out and eliminated Seth Rollins. Finn came out and had a nice performance as well. Him and Elias kind of rekindling their feud from last summer. Finn beats Elias with the coup de grace, and then out comes The Miz. The Miz Taraj came out first, but The Miz attacked Balor from behind, and then eventually the Miz Taraj would distract Balor, which I liked. That kept Finn looking strong. Boom, The Miz beats him with a skull-crushing finale. And they did this kind of long pause where, like, The Miz just realized, oh, shit, there's one more guy to go, and that guy's Braun Strowman. And out came Braun Strowman to a huge pop. He just beat the living crap out of The Miz, destroyed The Miz Taraj, beat The Miz with ease. Then he went back and did Renee Young gave him an interview. He did all his catchphrases. I'm not finished with you yet. Get these hands. Then he gave the Miz, 2 to 3 more power slams, and it was awesome. And it was almost like the first 2 hours of the show was this gauntlet match, which there's been some people that complained about it, like, my God, that's too much wrestling, like a 2-hour show, and they're just going to have a gauntlet match with the same 7 guys. I liked it in the fact that, hey, it was heavy wrestling. It was cool. It was something different that they're trying to get these guys over rather than the same old Raw starts with a 20-minute promo. We have a match, and then we have another promo. It was something cool to kind of get you geared up for these 7 guys in the Elimination Chamber compared to what they've done in the past with the guys in the Elimination Chambers. Just throw them in singles matches or throw them in a tag match together, and boom. And then it's like, well, you just saw every combination that you're going to see Sunday. Why would I tune in to watch? So it was kind of cool to go, boom, here you go. Here's the 7 guys in a different format. And that was really, really cool. So now I want to get into the preview of the Elimination Chamber card. I'm going to start with kind of the 2 lower matches here, make my predictions, kind of what's going on here in these guys' world, and then I'll move up to finally the men's and the women's. This is the first time they're having a women's Elimination Chamber match, so it should be really, really cool to see that. So first, this was just announced. It was actually announced the day after Monday Night Raw that the Raw Tag Team Championships are going to be on the line. The Bar, Sheamus and Cesaro are going to take on Titus Worldwide, which is Apollo and Titus O'Neil. This kind of just seems like a filler type match. We need, a little bit more time on the pay-per-view. We also need to buy some time for Sheamus and Cesaro to get them to WrestleMania as the champions. I don't think Titus Worldwide has a real shot here. I think most likely the Bar is going to win and they're going to move on. And I think they're building towards the Bar versus the Revival at WrestleMania. The Revival have kind of been doing a thing where they've been taking on the Club. They've been taking on some other tag teams. I think they're trying to build up the Revival. The Revival's kind of been injured since coming to the main roster. So I think the Revival is going to get their shot here at Mania against the Bar. So this is just kind of an interim feud to get him to WrestleMania. The next match that we're going to see is Bray Wyatt versus Woken Matt Hardy. I'm interested in this match, and I'm kind of interested in terms of why they're setting up this match here at Elimination Chamber, not having it at Mania. It may be a thing of time. They may not see that, hey, we can get this match at Mania, or they're going to do something bigger, kind of like the final deletion that Matt did in TNA and the Wyatt compound that the Wyatt family did with the New Day a couple years ago. So it may be something of that nature that they're building towards at Mania. So I hope here that Matt gets the win. I think Matt's going to get the win here so that they can have their rubber match at Mania, because we've seen Bray beat Matt already. I think on Raw 25 he beat Matt. They've kind of eliminated themselves and cost each other matches. So I think Matt's going to get the win here so that you're kind of at 1-1, your rubber match at Mania, and go on from there. There's also been talk that Jeff Hardy is coming back from injury and that he's going to be inserted in there, and you're going to get Brother Nero, and you're going to get the whole broken universe in WWE. So that's kind of been on this, the table, I know, from the dirt sheets. So you're going to see Wyatt versus Hardy. I think Woken Matt Hardy is going to take the win here on Sunday. And then the last little bit so far that's been announced for Elimination Chamber, I think, has big WrestleMania implications. The part I want to talk about is the Ronda Rousey contract signing is this Sunday. From everything I've read, they've employed that Ronda's going to sign her contract this Sunday to help ticket sales, because apparently ticket sales haven't been that great for this event that's on Sunday. And Ronda being a former UFC champion, UFC does most of their events in Las Vegas. This Elimination Chamber's in Las Vegas. Idea, okay, if we put Ronda there, going to sell some tickets. She's going to be in her home backyard. Won't get any boos or anything like that, because there's been some booing by the crowd, which I don't get. I don't see why anybody would boo Ronda Rousey. She's going to be, in my opinion, she's going to be the female Brock Lesnar. She's going to be this ass kicker that's going to take no prisoners. So I'm not sure why there's any backlash. Ronda, in my opinion, is going to be a lot better than Brock, because Brock does WWE for simply the money. And as a wrestling fan, that irritates me sometimes. He doesn't give two shits about the business. He just wants to make money. Ronda, as a genuine fan, has been a lifelong fan, so I think she's got some respect for the business. So she's going to do a lot better than Brock. So I think that this contract signing is going to kind of kick off her WrestleMania angle. I don't think that they're going to throw her into any title picture. I think what they did at the Royal Rumble was to kind of swerve fans and having her come out and try to look at Charlotte and Alexa Bliss for the titles and swerve everybody. The big rumor is that Ronda's going to be in the tag match that was teased 3 years ago at WrestleMania 31 when it was going to be Ronda Rousey and The Rock versus Stephanie McMahon and Triple H. I still think that's going to be the game plan here. I think that Ronda's going to sign her contract and somehow Stephanie's going to come out, and that's going to kind of launch their angle. I think it's going to be Stephanie and Triple H versus Ronda and a partner. Getting The Rock to be at WrestleMania this year is going to be very, very difficult. It's always difficult because back at WrestleMania 29 in 2013, The Rock wrestled Cena for the WWE Championship, and The Rock basically had a hernia, and it delayed everything that he was doing with the Hercules movie. And now all the movies that he's on and movie companies put an insurance that if The Rock is going to wrestle, you have to take out the insurance policy. Well, it's extremely expensive, even for a guy like Vince McMahon in the WWE to pay. It's several $1 million on this insurance policy for The Rock. So if The Rock doesn't get there, who's going to be Ronda's partner? There's been rumors that it could be Kurt Angle, but that's been changed in recent weeks that it looks like they're going to go Kurt Angle and Seth Rollins at WrestleMania, which is that's going to be a barn burner and a hell of a match if we get that at Mania this year. I think what you'll end up getting is Braun Strowman as Ronda's partner, and I think that's the way you build Braun Strowman to be this mega star, because that match is going to have so much mainstream publicity around it that if you put Braun and Ronda, Triple H and Stephanie, you just created your new big star. Braun Strowman can be that mainstream star that The Rock and Stone Cold and John Cena and Hulk Hogan are, because he's larger than life. He's in a match with Ronda Rousey at WrestleMania. It's that water cooler match that the general fan's going to turn into, and Braun Strowman could be your guy. So I think if that's the route you go, you put Braun as Ronda's partner. But I think this Sunday she's going to come out, sign her contract, and Stephanie some way will come out there, and that'll kind of kickstart our WrestleMania angle with Ronda, Stephanie, and the tag match. They also this past Monday aired a kick-ass video package about Ronda. They showed her in the wrestling ring training. They showed everything about her, the Rumble, everything, and it was killer. One thing WWE always does solid on is their video packages, hyping up whatever it may be. They kick ass when they do it. So I definitely would be ready for some more killer video packages with Ronda hyping her up. And the final two matches here I want to take a preview to are the women's and the men's Elimination Chamber matches. The women's Elimination Chamber match is for the Raw Women's title. It's going to be Alexa Bliss defending against Sasha Banks, against Bayley, Sonya Deville, Mickie James, and Mandy Rose. This is going to be interesting because there's been so much women's revolution stuff that in the last year we've got the first women's Money in the Bank. We had the first women's Royal Rumble. Now we're getting the first women's Elimination Chamber match. So one of the things about this match is I've heard a lot of guys on other podcasts and interviews, guys like Mark Henry, Chris Jericho, talk about how dangerous of a match, because outside that ring, it's solid steel. It ain't no give. And women's bodies are typically a lot smaller than the men's bodies when it comes to pro wrestling. So them taking some bumps on it, it's going to be very, very, difficult to see how well they take these bumps and that nobody gets seriously hurt. This is going to be a hell of a match. 6 really good women. You do have some young ones in here in Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose, but you do have a veteran like Mickie James that can kind of walk them through, and it's just going to be interesting to see because it's the first women's Elimination Chamber. They don't really have a template of how this is going to go. The first women's Royal Rumble, I thought went really well for the fact that they never had one. Thought it kicked ass. The women's Money in the Bank last year, kind of went okay, but it was, once again, you don't have a template, you don't have anything to refer to except the men's. How do the women do this and make it their own and make it different? I think here in this situation, I really don't think they're going to do a title change. I think Alexa Bliss walks in as champion and walks out. I could see them swerving and having Sasha win, but I'm pretty sure, I would say my gut is going with Alexa Bliss is walking in Raw Women's Champion and then walking out Raw Women's Champion in that match. And finally, we have the men's Elimination Chamber match, which for the first time is going to have 7 guys, as I mentioned earlier. You've got Finn Balor versus John Cena versus Roman Reigns versus the Intercontinental Champion, The Miz, versus Braun Strowman versus Elias, and finally Seth Rollins. This is going to be interesting to me because it's the first time they've ever had 7 guys in an Elimination Chamber. Typically, you've got your 2 guys that start, the 4 in the pod. This time, you're going to get 3 guys starting and 4 in the pods. It's going to be interesting to see how they play. As I've mentioned before on my very first episode, I did a little Royal Rumble preview, and I mentioned that WWE typically the Monday before likes to swerve their fans. Seth Rollins' performance that he had on Monday in the Gauntlet match was great, and it's like everyone's like, well, he's got to be the favorite now in Elimination Chamber. I don't think he's going to end up being the favorite, mainly for the fact that when somebody has a strong performance on a Monday before a pay-per-view, they typically don't win. And I think everybody in the wrestling world, WWE world, has kind of known on the rumor sheets that it's going to be Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar is the main event of this year's WrestleMania. We've kind of known that since last year's WrestleMania when Roman beat Taker and Brock beat Goldberg for the Universal title, that it was going to be that match. That was the match that their WWE and Vince wants to get to. They tried it at WrestleMania 3 years ago. They had to have Seth Rollins cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase to save it because the reaction was going to be so poor. This is going to be now 31, 32, 33, 34, 4th WrestleMania in a row for Roman Reigns if he main events. And once again, I'm not a huge Roman Reigns hater. I think he does great in-ring work. I just think that by pushing him so hard down people's throats, they're going to get a rejection. And I think going off the air at this WrestleMania and you finally have Brock Lesnar losing clean, that Roman's going to stand at the top with the Universal title belt, and you're going to go off the air just like you went the last 2 years with everybody booing and going home unhappy because Roman Reigns is standing on top. And I have no issue with Roman Reigns' in-ring ability. My issue comes down to his character. He doesn't have a defined character. He didn't do like Dean or Seth and try to separate himself from the Shield gimmick when the Shield split up. It's been the same thing. His facial expressions, his promos, anything of that. That's what I don't like about him. He doesn't have that character that I connect with. He doesn't connect with the audience on an emotional level. So having this guy try to be the face of the company doesn't work. In my opinion, Braun Strowman should be the main event of WrestleMania. It should be Braun Strowman, Brock Lesnar, Universal title. That's how you build it. Braun is super over right now. He's super hot. He's the guy I think he's more believable than Roman Reigns could be Brock Lesnar, because in stature, when you put Braun Strowman and Brock Lesnar face to face, Braun Strowman's bigger than Brock Lesnar. So I can buy that. I'm not buying Roman Reigns. My personal favorite right now is Finn Balor. I would love to see Finn win the Elimination Chamber, go to WrestleMania, get a shot at that Universal title that he never lost because he got injured, and take on Brock Lesnar, beat Brock Lesnar, and have that big WrestleMania moment with the demon paint on and everything. But I don't think that's the route they're going. I truly believe here in this Elimination Chamber, Roman Reigns is going to win. Roman Reigns is going to win. He's going to go on to take on Brock Lesnar, and that's going to be all she wrote. Cena's not got a shot. I think that we all have kind of known the rumors that it's going to be Cena and Undertaker at WrestleMania. So I think that that's the route they're going to go. To me, it looks like they're teasing Miz and Finn Balor for the IC title at Mania, which I can definitely get behind that. And I think ultimately Braun's going to end up in that tag match with Ronda, Triple H, and Stephanie. So they want to do Reigns and Lesnar. that's the route they're going to go. And I think Reigns wins. I think Rollins is the kind of the odd one out here. But from what I've kind of seen and the way they've done everything, I think you're going to get Seth Rollins and Kurt Angle at WrestleMania, which is going to be a hell of a match. Might be the match that steals the show. Either that one or Shinsuke AJ, because we know we're going to get that at Mania. So this Elimination Chamber is going to be a good little card. So once again, I'll kind of recap my predictions per match. The Bar versus Titus Worldwide. I'm taking the Bar. Wyatt versus Hardy. I'm taking Matt Hardy. Asuka versus... Oh, I forgot one match. Asuka versus Nia Jax. Good thing I looked at my notes. Asuka versus Nia Jax. And if Nia Jax wins this match, she gets added to the Raw Women's title match and make it a triple threat. This match is interesting because Asuka has been undefeated her entire time in WWE. She has not lost her whole time in WWE. So it's going to be interesting to me how they pull this off, because you want to keep Asuka undefeated, but you don't want to sacrifice Nia because you've been making Nia this undestroyable force. I think some way, somehow, they're going to try to keep both strong. I think in the Ultimate, what you're going to get is they haven't made it clear on TV that Asuka has declared she's going to take on the Raw Women's Champion. She won the Royal Rumble, and she had a choice of which champion she got to choose. Well, she hasn't made it clear yet that she's choosing the Raw Women's Champion. I think that what's going to eventually happen here is one of two things. Nia somehow wins by a count-out, DQ, she gets added, and Asuka goes, no, I'm out, I'm going to SmackDown, I'm going to challenge Charlotte one-on-one. So then Nia gets her championship match against Alexa one-on-one. Or they somehow have a non-finish, they keep both strong, Asuka still ends up going to SmackDown, challenging Charlotte, Nia challenges Alexa. I think ultimately you're going to get Asuka challenging for Charlotte SmackDown Women's title and Nia versus Alexa for that Raw Women's title. I think you have to balance it out. There's nobody on SmackDown right now for Charlotte to face at WrestleMania. I think with having Ronda on the Raw roster and Raw having that kind of big situation, you got to send Asuka over to SmackDown, make things a bigger match for Charlotte at WrestleMania. I think that's the route you go. So I think ultimately I'm not going to really pick a winner here. I think you're going to get a non-finish between Asuka and Nia Jax. That's how I see it. So good thing I took a look at my notes. I missed one match there. So let me recap here. The Bar versus Titus Worldwide. I'm going to take the Bar. Matt Hardy versus Bray Wyatt. I've got Matt Hardy in that match. Asuka, Nia Jax, I think will be a non-finish. Women's Elimination Chamber. Alexa Bliss will retain, and in the men's Elimination Chamber, Roman Reigns will pick up the victory there. So, once again, those are my predictions for Elimination Chamber this Sunday on the WWE Network. Like I like to give my predictions on pay-per-views. We're into WrestleMania season. After this, there's only one pay-per-view left before WrestleMania, which is the SmackDown exclusive Fastlane on March 11th. So we'll do a little preview the week before that, and then we're into WrestleMania 34. So there we go. We're full floor, pedal to the metal when it comes to WrestleMania season. Once again, want to thank everybody for listening to the podcast. Want to thank Vinny and Phil from Last in Line for being on today. Great little interview. Once again, want to remind you that social media. Go on Twitter and find Nick's R&W Podcast is the Twitter handle. Nick's Rock and Wrestling Podcast on Facebook, as well as the Gmail, Rock and Wrestling Podcast at gmail.com. Always to come in contact. Make sure you hit the subscribe button on iTunes so every Wednesday night as this podcast gets uploaded, you've got it. You can also listen to SoundCloud. In the coming weeks, I will also get a YouTube channel that will be up and running, and you'll be able to listen on there if you want to listen through YouTube. But I appreciate everybody's feedback. I appreciate, once again, Vinny and Phil for coming on this week. Great little interview. And next week, we will have another guest. I wanted to mention here that I had a big weekend in podcasting. I went and did 3 different interviews. I did one with Vinny and Phil, and then I did one with my guest coming up next week, global sensation independent wrestler Roy Isaac. Very cool dude. We sat down and talked all things about his career. We talked all things about WWE. How's he doing? So Roy Isaac will be on next week's episode. Once again, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you listen. Twitter, Facebook, Gmail. We'll see you next week.